Yes, Narendra, you can pose your questions. I think you want to share your screen. I think I'll have to make you the presenter. I'll make you the host so that you can share your screen.
Yes, yes. Let me see.
Yeah, I have made you the host so you can actually share the screen.
So I have covered this one, the first one, in architecture.
Okay, 1 second. So let me. Okay, can you just type what you're? Oh, okay, okay, great. Whatever is showing as complete is complete. Correct.
Right, and there are also there are some video like in this video. In this module, one video is not working, so that is why.
Okay, can you just ping me the link of that video separately in a mail saying not working, or put it in a WhatsApp thing wherever. Work management.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I will fix that actually. I will fix. You just ping me which is the video what that was not working. I will actually fix it for you.
Right, I will send you.
Yeah, you just send me separately what all videos are not working in an email or on WhatsApp. I'll do that. So whatever is showing as complete is so you've done the chapter on reference architectures, you've done agility and architecture, then you've done uh, introduction to enterprise sales. Okay. So and what else? So three you've done, or one more? You said 4 you've done.
Yeah, it is also about to complete because one video is not working.
Oh, okay.
Similarly, here also 3 video are few video are not working there. So
Okay, perfect. So I will just whatever is not working, you send me separately. I will kind of fix that. And as regards what you are, what are the kind of queries that you have on this, so we can actually look at that. So there are a few additional modules that I will be recording. If I don't record it, I will actually do a one-on-one and cover that for you separately once you finish this. So I think there are around 3 or 4 more modules which I have the material, but I've not recorded them. So I will be recording them and sharing with you.
okay, so my first question is means I have done like this module and few are very informative. Like I have got some more idea about microservices. Means what is innovation, what is cheap, fast, and uh, fail fast and fail cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got idea of this kind of terminology and why microservices is important for this kind of culture.
Yes.
And what is consultative selling. So these were these were new area for me, and these were very well explained by you. So
Okay.
yeah. So and my question is means how to keep all these things together.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, as a leader, you are kind of expected to know all of these areas over a period of time. So you will have to, if you say reference architectures, you should be able to, search for, let us say, what is the domain that you're working on currently?
I'm working in
Which is
US
your domain
mortgage.
currently?
US mortgage home loan.
Okay, US mortgage and home loan. Okay, so if you are working on that stuff, so there is this industry domain called LOMA, right? So LOMA does with insurance and mortgages, and so there's LOMA. LOMA is an industry standard for the insurance industry. So you can actually uh, be well versed with your domain and look at what are the reference architectures, how do you do business data application technology reference architectures based on the case that is required, and suggest corrective practices to improve your product journey or product roadmap. So that is how you will have to use this skill when it comes to reference architectures, because you should know as a leader, what are the popular reference architectures in your scheme of things. So you should actually know that what are the kind of skills required on the reference architectures and stuff like that. You should be able to create your own reference architecture for your company. So let us say you've got currently some architecture for your mortgage solution. So you should be able to create a reference architecture for that, and that should help you to, avoid rework, and you should be able to, showcase it to your teams, and they should be able to reuse it, and your subordinates should be able to use it, and so that you're actually not reinventing the wheel each time. So let us say that you've done a mortgage implementation for a client in South America. So create a reference architecture for that and say these are the building blocks that are required to create a reference architecture. And then you use that knowledge to, when you pitch for another RFC in the same region, you can actually use that reference architecture to pitch it to other clients. So that is how you will have to, sell this knowledge within the company. So the reference architecture stuff. And sometimes you'll have client discussions, you'll be asked to fill up RFCs and RFPs, you'll have to respond to sales queries and pre-sales teams. So then you will have to understand what is the reference architecture implication, what is the knowledge from the reference architecture that you shall be able to say, okay, all of these building blocks are there within a solution. These building blocks are not there. And then you actually do a mix and match of those things and tell the client, okay, these solutions are the plain vanilla solution. These extra solutions will cost you so much. So the homework is you should be able to create a reference architecture for your organization, Narendra, and I'll help you to create that. So just as a homework, you create your reference architecture, and I'll tell you where you're going wrong or what can be done to that. So whatever is covered in that module should give you enough guidance to create a reference architecture. And reference architecture can be created in all the 4 domains. You can create a business reference architecture, you can create a data reference architecture, technology, and application. So let us say your concern is currently application or technology or business, or if it's data also, just ensure that you're doing that. You don't have to do all the 4. Whatever is required by your organization and what is your current scheme of things and what is your current scope, for that you create a reference architecture. So that's about the reference architecture part.
Okay, and in this scenario, suppose I also need to store some infra-related things like Azure or AWS configuration file, so that will also fall.
Yes. For that, that's a good question. So you can actually create a reference architecture for Azure, reference architecture for AWS. The way you are using those solutions within your company, you can create a reference architecture. Of course, there is Azure and AWS white papers which have published the industry-specific reference architectures for large implementations, but your case might be quite different. You might be using a Lambda AWS function in a certain way. You must be using an EC2 instance. You might be using typically an S3 block and then streaming functions and some notifications and few other AWS functions which are quite specific to your mortgage solution. So the way you're using your solution, you can actually use the knowledge of a solution building block and create a solution building block for your specific implementation, and also try to create a logical building block wherein you're keeping it implementation independent, and when it comes to solution building blocks, you're making them solution dependent. And does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can actually do that, and yeah. So I think that's about the query on the reference architecture part. So the other module that you've completed is the agility and architecture stuff. So when it comes to agility and architecture, as a leader, your ability to slice and dice the architecture is very important. How will you create a continuous business value for your client or customer in an agile fashion, as opposed to the waterfall way of doing things? because as a solution architect, as an enterprise architect, when you go, people are more concerned about how are you incrementally delivering value as opposed to doing it in a big bang approach. So that skill will be quite useful from that module. And also the skill that you should be able to take a requirement and look at an epic, and from that epic you should be able to slice user stories, and you should be able to, from an epic you should be able to go to, from a product backlog increment you go to epic, and from epic you should be able to go to features to user stories to user tasks. And then how do you break up all of those things, and how do you write a good user story? How do you slice and dice your architecture so that you're taking care of the overall concern that is there in the architecture, and you are able to incrementally deliver value to your customers. So that skill is also very important these days. As a business leader, you should be looking at, as you said, fail fast, fail forward, fail cheap kind of philosophies, and also the ability to slice and dice your architecture so that you're able to create modular architectures. So when you're able to create modular architectures, you will be able to sell the modular architectures well with the customer, because everybody wants to pay only for what they use, pay for what they are invested in, and not, they don't want a big bang, take everything or take nothing kind of. So they only want to pay uh, for use, and pay only as much as they use, that kind of stuff. So we should be able to make it as modular as possible. So that's the takeaway from the agility and the architecture part. How do you mix the agile parts with the enterprise architecture parts, and how do you scale them in a large company? Like if you've got an agile team which is like 5 to 10 members, and then when you go to an EA team, like probably you have 50 to 100 members. So how do you use those agile principles and then roll it out into customer environments? So that is the key there that you'll be expected to know from that chapter. And for that, you can do some exercises on how do you take Epic and slice and dice them into user stories and tasks, and ensure that you're creating continuous business value, or what they call it as minimum viable product or minimum viable increment.
So this sprint part and the epic story and task part we are doing for very long for our tech story or user story for our regular development work.
Sure,
So,
yes.
how we can implement same thing for architecture work, because in it will be vision.
Yeah. So what is there is a scaled agile framework which actually talks about how do you, so you're at an architectural level, you've got an epic which is an architectural item which you can break down into your features and user stories and user tasks. So you'll have to map it to those requirements. How do you go from the program to the project to the module level details? So how do you break that? So there is a one-on-one correspondence with that. So if you look at how do you map that in from an architecture perspective, there is a capability increment. So if you see capability increments chapter in the TOGAF stuff. So I think, let me share my screen. Okay, I think I'll send that separately to you. So just note down how do you map the agile part to the architecture part. So it can be done using capability increments. So from the capability increment part, you will actually have to ensure that the epics are broken down into user stories and tasks and features. So how do you, and effectively once you rolled out, you've actually rolled out an architectural capability. So that's how you'll have to look at it. So scaled agile also talks about a scrum of scrums. So initially you've got a scrum. So your ADM is iterating it like we have the architecture vision, and then you have all of these parts which are doing the business data application and technology parts. And then you define the vision at the enterprise architecture level. You define the business architecture, but the execution parts, when it comes to data application and technology, those execution parts, you can actually get it done using a Scrum kind of a philosophy. And you will have to ensure that your deliverables that are there, which is So you can mix agile and enterprise architecture together, where they complement based on the process maturity of your company. So you should look at how you can marry these two concerns, because working software is the agile part. Working software need not guarantee business outcome or business value, but enterprise architecture is focused on business outcome or business value. So you have to focus your efforts to ensure that all your agile projects are geared towards a big ticket item or an epic, and that epic is actually solving a real business problem. And then based on that, you will have to ensure that you are rolling that guideline throughout the organization. And so if you, I'll send you some materials on the Spotify model. So there is one is a scale agile. You can read that. You'll get some clues on how to connect these two dots. The other one is Spotify, which is a music company. So they have actually mixed the large iterations with the agile kind of work, and they call them tribes. And so something like a Scrum of Scrum, which is there in the safe agile world. So they have done that. So I'll share you those to Spotify. You just send me a mail separately on these things. I'll tell you where you can find those related literatures.
Okay. So can we also have a look of means how this epic and story looks in term of architecture? Because whatever you said, I got one idea. So we have to create one epic for our business task, and after that we can create different story and task in a hierarchy based on where they falls, and we can proceed accordingly after
Yes. Yeah. So that's exactly what is done in the Scrum of Scrums. So there is one big Scrum which is managing smaller Scrums. So let us say that your bigger Scrum is taking care of the look and feel of the entire UI across your product. So the look and feel is going to be made uniform across the. So that's a big ticket item. But under that, you got smaller scrums, like maybe there is internationalization, which is one item. Then there is, what do you call it as multi-byte. Then there is language changes. Then there could be UI UX changes. There could be specific left to right, right to left kind of orientation within the UI UX. The user experience itself can be one of the Scrum items. And typically you could also have things like customization, regionalization. All of these things are separate items. So you can actually create that kind of a hierarchy that this is a big ticket item. Under this big ticket item, there are small individual scrums that will be executed, which will be answerable to this overall arcing goal, which is that of improving the UI UX for the entire product and solution. And based on that, you will have to ensure how do you break those items. So you can use various slicing and dicing criteria to break it, which is from the agile world. So like there are invest principles, and there are a lot of other principles that you can slice and dice. So it could be based on geography, based on UI, based on users. You could use functional and technical slicing parameters to slice it. And kind of what is the business value that you are giving to the end user. That is also you should keep in mind. So I think I'll share you those white papers. So if you read that, you will actually get a feel for how to use these things in practice.
Right. So I was looking for that.
Yeah. So that's about that chapter. And which is the other one that you have done actually?
I have done
sales.
this
Okay.
week.
Yeah, enterprise business architecture. Yeah, you're still good doing it. So we'll talk about it when you're completed, and about the enterprise sales kind of stuff. So when you are trying to be a business leader, the expectation is how the company is positioning their value to their customers. So you should know the consultative selling process for your, how do you do the consultative selling process? using industry popular frameworks, and how do you apply them in practice, and how do you ensure that you are able to create business value to your end customers, and how do you go on a transactional mode as opposed to the old way of selling. Old way of selling is, okay, this is what I've got, take it or leave it. But the new way of selling is, okay, what is your problem? What is that you want to be solved? And then we keep on a conversation going, and then we try to solve that problem instead of. So how do you get that approach in that thing, and how do you incrementally solve problems? And also the concept of what they call it as just-in-time architecture. So only deliver whatever is required for your current need, and don't over deliver or under deliver it. So because they say if you deliver exactly what the customer asked for in the beginning of the project, by the end of the project, then you have missed, you have not fulfilled his requirement. So that could be strange. You're saying, okay, whatever he asked for in the beginning of the project, if I deliver it, how will I miss my target? But the intention is whatever he asked for in the beginning of the project, like if he asked for you to develop 10 or 15 screens, by the time you deliver the second or the third screen, he'll say screen number 8, 7, 8, 9 are not required because this requirement is already matching my other needs. So, that kind of, so basically, once you are on a constant agile mode of delivery, you can actually uh, find out. So this is a key component even in the sales part also. When you're writing and responding to RFPs and RFCs, keep that agile mindset within you and ensure that you are not over delivering and under delivering. And you also need to know the nuances of what's involved in the sales process, what is pre-sales, what is post-sales, what is RFC, RFP, RFI. So I think I have those modules. I will be sharing that with you separately. I think currently it is not there, but currently what is there is the consultative selling part. So you should know how to respond to an RFP. How do you write an RFP? How do you research on your client? How do you ensure that you are replying correctly to those RFPs based on your area of interest or domain that you're specifically into. So all of these things are going to be very key in terms of ensuring that you do the right job there.
Kiran, I have one question here. So, like when we talk about consultative selling, so it says that you have to listen 80% and you have to speak 20%, and you have to imagine yourself in a client's shoes. And so that you can understand their problem well. And at the same time, you need to ensure that you are not over delivering and you are not under delivering. So sometimes what happens, client don't want to disclose you the complete business scenario. They want you to develop or deliver some small part of any large big application. So then how to take
that is like a closed kind of a so they just so there's not much of scope for consultative selling because he just directly gave you all the requirements, and it's a very hard and fast requirement. This is X, this is Y, and you have your scope is between X and Y. You don't go further this way, that way. He just inks everything on paper and says, this is what exactly you want. I'm paying you for that. You do it for me. So there's not much of scope for consultative selling. But consultative selling comes into picture when you're trying to create innovative products within your product lines. So when you are becoming a co-creator with your customers, because you've taken up a big data project or a blockchain or an artificial intelligence project for your client or an IoT project, and he also doesn't know what is the best standards in the market. You are also co-creating along with him rather than imposing your ideas on him. You're saying together we will discover and create an innovation path. At that time, consultative selling is very, very useful. But if he's the other approach that you said, okay, I'm going to pay you for XYZ work, you do what I'm telling you to do. So there's not much of scope for discussion and debate. There, in such cases, there's not much of consultative selling scope. But still, to understand what his actual requirements are, you can get into a consultative selling kind of a mode to find out. Based on that, you ask open-ended questions and closed-ended questions and find out okay, how do you, scope your requirements?
Okay, got it. So if you are doing any part of any application, then we need not to include the whole consultative
Yeah,
selling.
yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, exactly. If everything is very well defined for you, you don't get into that mode. But consultative selling is quite useful when you are at this initial phase, when you're trying to, let us say he's a fresh client and he says, I want to develop some, holiday booking application from you. And okay, then at that time you go into a consultative selling mode because he perhaps doesn't know what he wants out of that application. So you research, he researches, you get into talks, and then you find out what is the best way to get into solving his problem. But if he's already predefined everything and say, okay, this is what I want you guys to do, I don't care if the market, the product wins or succeeds, that is my problem, not your problem, then there is no scope for consultative selling. Consultative selling is quite useful when you are a transformation partner in the client's journey, wherein you also have a say that together we will succeed.
Okay, so when we work as a partner or as a consultant, so that it become more useful or relevant, you can say.
Yes, exactly. So at that time, it will be useful. And when requirements are varying, also it is useful. Like he's not clear on your requirement, you're also like not clear. You're trying to do something innovative, and you're trying to discover something which is not there in the market. Then consultative selling is quite useful. But if he's saying, okay, this is exactly what I want to do, I'm going to pay you for this. This is the amount of time, money it's going to take. Everything is fixed, so there's not much scope for consultative selling.
Okay, thanks, Kiran. Got it.
Yeah. So I think these are the 4 chapters that you have done. And as a part of the homework, Narendra, what you can do is you will have to, as we discussed, for all of these things, you write down what you're going to be doing. Like for reference architecture, you'll have to create one for the organization. And for the agile part, how do you mix architecture and agile parts and showcase value? That is the exercise that you'll have to do. And for the enterprise sales thing, it's not complete. I will have to tell you about a few other things also there. And I will have to walk you through how to respond to an RFC. So that's action on my side on that topic. But otherwise, business architecture, you're still working on. And write down what other pain points you're facing in your company, in your regular day-to-day job. And just send me those bulleted points that you're struggling with. I'll try to make some material and videos on that.
Okay, that I will prepare. And Kiran, one more thing. So can we get the PPT which you have shown in this video and the other PDF document or any training?
PPT, I will not be able to share, Narendra, but I'll tell you from where all I've taken those material. I'll give you a reference material and this thing. But the video access you'll get for quite long. So PPT, I will not be able to share it because it is taken from multiple sources. But I'll give you the references from where all I've taken it so that you can read on those. For those chapters, you have to read those particular links.
Okay.
Yeah.
That will be if I walk scroll through these PPT, so it will be easy for me to recall anything or make notes and other things.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I still haven't created it like in that format because I'll take a lot more time. But I will tell you from what all links I've taken it so that I'll make it like that. Okay, which are the readable material for each module? I'll make a readable material section, and then you can refer to those parts, and then you can be updated on those topics. So I will share the readable material for each of the topics.
And do you have any training material in Google Drive for this course, like you said for TOGAF?
Training material meaning what?
Any printable media or any?
Okay. No. For this, that's what. So I will be sharing you all the links that from where I've prepared this because it's taken from multiple sources that is there because this is crystallized information from various industry problems and segments and across domains. So it's not there in one place, but I will try to share you all the readable material for you, and then you can pause the video, make notes about it, and then if you want more details on it, you ping me, shoot me an email. I'll share you the relevant reading material that you need to augment for that particular topic. Fine. So currently I don't have it in that format because it's taken from multiple sources, but I will work towards that and I'll try to provide you something like that. But for each module, I'll give you what you need to cover so that you are completely aware of what's happening in that particular section module from the perspective of this course.
Okay.
I will share you those links. So yeah, just remind me on that. I will be sharing those links.
And what are the any other thing other than this course I need to cover? Like one time you told me, means what are the day-to-day activities of
Yeah. So yeah, what the day-to-day activities is like, so let us say that you are currently, tell me what is your current what is your day job like, Narendra? What do you end up doing? What is the domain that you're working on? What is the technology that you're working on currently?
I'm working on .NET Stack,
.NET. Okay.
and my day-to-day activity, like I'm working in a COC team. So we work on innovation kind of things, like we are getting new kind of project for our company, and we develop it. It will be applicable in whole organization.
Okay.
So we are doing this kind of innovation, like trying new things and technology. And other than .NET, we are working in AWS and Azure.
Okay. Fine. So you can actually pick up, and what is your mortgage, you said? Okay. One is you'll have to decide which way you want to go on your career path. You'll have to decide that you want to be a techno-functional kind of a person, or you want to be a technology guy, or you want to be a technology business leader, wherein you want to manage teams and all that. So based on what you want to do in the next 3 to 4 years, you'll have to prepare yourself for that. So let us say you want to be a techno-functional expert, then read upon a little bit every day on the best trends in insurance industry. What are the good trends in the insurance industry? How are people changing insurance? How is digital transformation affected in the insurance segment? So these days, people are actually creating insurance in such a way that in case you are a car driver, so they are cross-selling insurance with the automobile companies. So they fit an IoT device with the car and say, oh, this, when they sell you a car insurance, they actually have a tie-up with the automobile guy like Honda, Toyota, or Volvo, or one of them, and say that, okay, we will fit an IoT device in this car. And if this guy is 80% of the time driving in the safe limits, which is 80 to 100, and not crossing the speed limits for most of the time, then he's eligible for 15% discount in the next year for the insurance premium. So, those kind of details you can actually be updated on in your insurance domain. The other one is, I would suggest you to grow into a techno-functional solution architect. You also get certified on Azure Cloud Stack or AWS Cloud Stack. Since you're from a .NET background, I would say first get certified on Azure, become Azure solution architect credentials, and then also side by side spend a little bit of time on acquiring industry domain knowledge. Watch your channels, become part of one of the groups, like where does mortgage industry updates are there, where are the insurance industry updates. So a lot of, you just Google them, you'll find a lot of them. So join one of those groups, and every day just listen to one active thread in that discussion. You don't have to read the entire stuff. Spend 10 or 15 minutes, maybe not more than 20 minutes, on one particular topic, and make notes about it. And you should be able to speak about that topic to your friend or your colleague. So you should become like an authority. So every day only spend 10 or 15 minutes, learn something new about that something new. And if you have doubts, make a note of it, ask somebody in that industry segment, post a LinkedIn query or ping them separately and then say, okay, how does this work? How does that work? And then over a period of 1 or 2 years, you'll become an expert in that area and people start respecting you for the knowledge.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So that is the way you'll have to incrementally build your expertise, and you will, yeah, whatever interests you. I'll just give you an example. I mean, let us say insurance doesn't interest you. Maybe it's mortgage that interests you, or maybe it's cloud technology that interests you. So focus your efforts on Kubernetes or cloud or Azure stack. And then in that microservices or APIs or big data or analytics, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? So whatever interests you, keep your focus on that. But you should also have a long-term path that, okay, what my focus is going to become my career also. So with that effort, you put your efforts so that, a year or two later, you are, actually going to be working towards your goals in that fashion. So just make sure that you're doing a very planned reading, and it is, telling you what you should be doing next. And don't spend more than 15-20 minutes every day on reading that. And just before you hit the bed or something, watch half an hour of any video that you like from an industry leader in your segment, and make notes about it, and try to have some thoughts of, okay, how does this work? How does that work? Be inquisitive about that area. Over a period of 1 or 2 years, you will become an expert for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Karan. Very good.
Yep. So I think that's about those things. And whatever queries keep coming to you, so what's your current designation? Are you a module lead, tech lead, or
Tech lead. I'm senior tech lead.
senior tech lead? Okay. So your next logical progression that I see is you should be able to make a transition to becoming a solution architect, because you already have the required number of years that you spent. So when
Right.
you're jumping next, you should become a solution architect. And this course will help you how to transition to those, and how do you make those trade-off decisions, how do you analyze architectures, the strength and weaknesses of architectures, and how do you inform customer about what is good, what is not good, how do you make trade-off decisions. So I think that's how you should be looking at your career path. And then you spend a few years in the solution architect space, then of course you can look into becoming a principal consultant or a principal architect or an enterprise architect, and then a director, VP, all of that sort of stuff. So all of those things will come quite naturally in that sequence. Currently, I would say, based on your thing, you should be moving into a product architect or product consultant or solution architect, those kind of roles.
Okay, got it.
Because I think you already have got 14 or 15 years, right? Industry experience. You got 14.
Yes.
Yeah, so it is a good time to step into those kind of roles. I mean, you can still be happy doing what you're doing, but since you are acquiring so much of knowledge, it is, you could progress into those areas, and you can actually upgrade yourself to those skill sets. So I think what I suggest, Narendra, is every day you spend some time on these topics also, and then follow some leaders, subscribe to some YouTube channels of your interest, and then watch not more than 15-20 minutes or half an hour, and then make notes about it, and then shoot me a mail also with what are challenges that you're facing on the job. Like your management would say that, okay, these are the KPIs that you need to upgrade yourself. These are the areas that you need to improve, or whatever you feel, you need to, because that's your own self-assessment kind of stuff. And also I've sent you a self-assessment template, right, sometime back. So ensure that you're completing that and the daily activity stuff. So that will tell you what all areas you need to actually focus on. so that you will get to know, okay, where do you see yourself from 2 years, 3 years from now, and then plan your journey accordingly.
Okay, and the leader which you are saying you need to follow a leader. So this leader are technical technology
Yeah,
specialist.
it could be a technology leader, it could be a business leader, it could be somebody like who interests you, you know. Oh,
Okay.
इसके बात में कुछ दम है, सुनने में मजा आ रहा है, you know. He gives
Okay.
you that inspiration that you need to get to the next level. Like you, certain things are not clear. Okay, how does this work in insurance domain? How does that work? Or you have some doubt on some AWS Lambda functions. So just watch those kind of things, or basically how does somebody, you know, make corporate presentations. Like you're expected to, as you grow in your career, if you're able to talk to a team and make a presentation, your growth in the company will be faster. You know, so how do you learn the skills of how to talk to people? What kind of language are they using? What is the vocabulary that is there in your area of interest? So you just follow those kind of things. And then, okay, so let us say you want to be a cloud expert on Azure in the next 2 years. So read up everything on Azure, Google on YouTube, say Azure case studies, industry case studies, or Azure reference architectures. Every day, just learn little by little on stuff, because it's an ocean there. You don't have to learn everything. But let's say you're doing Azure Analytics or Azure Big Data or Azure messaging. So you should be go into that focus and learn everything about that, and then attend meetups, make some presentations in your company, create some reference architectures, and over a period of time, you'll be unstoppable.
Okay, got it.
So I think that's about from my side. And as I told you, Narendra, just make a list of everything, and then send me a mail, and I think we'll have another session like this, and where we'll, you know, again have this kind of a chat wherein we're clarifying the queries, and you can actually do those homework exercises also. We'll review them, and then I'll suggest you what is the best practice in those things, so that, you know, you're quite clear on those aspects also.
Right, Kiran.
Okay. So anything else, Narendra?
No, Kiran. So I will complete this pending video, and I will make notes side by side.
Sure.
So
Okay.
whenever I'll get in query, I will email you so that you can check it in your free time.
Sure. Okay. So I'm stopping the recording now. So thank you.